Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Really pleased that you've chosen to join us today rather than taking advantage of the lovely weather. Today's webinar, we'll be covering the topic of smarter ways to manage your flood defense assets. With increasing pressure to maintain and monitor flood defenses, it's never been more important for authorities to have robust systems in place. Today's webinar will focus on how InfoAsset Manager supports lead local flood authorities in meeting their statutory duties, particularly around building and maintaining a detailed biography of flood defense assets. We'll explore how InfoAsset Manager helps you to stay compliant with Section 21 of the Flood and Water Management Act, support the use of 298 inspection standards, and ultimately improves your how you manage and assess asset conditions, schedule inspections, and reduce flood risk. I'm Simon Rentfree, Business Development Manager at Symmetry, and I have experience in the water industry through my time at Symmetry, and my background from work at Autodesk under their Autodesk Water Infrastructure team, formerly known as Innovize. I'm joined today by Idris, Technical Solution Engineer for Autodesk Water Infrastructure. Idris graduated with an Honours Physics degree in the mid-1990s and has spent his career of 25 plus years in the water industry. He began his career at Bywater International, followed by Atkins, then called WS Atkins, followed by Wallingford Software, which is part of the HR Wallingford Group, which also became Innovize in 2009. Whilst at Innovize, Idris has had many roles, including technical services, project support for clients, supporting sales, and steering product development of the modeling and asset management software. Currently, he is now pre-sales system solution engineer for asset management. We're really pleased to be here today amongst water professionals, and today Idris and I will be speaking about the challenges of flood asset management and managing those risks throughout the planning and planning stages. For those who are not aware of Symmetry, I'll now give a brief overview of who we are. Symmetry are a consultancy-led technology partner. We supply AEC solutions to support projects from cradle to grave, working with clients, design teams, contractors, and manufacturers. Our offerings include software, training, consultancy, and technical support, as well as document management and project delivery. And we're often working on live projects in the role of information manager, supporting our clients with ISO 19650 certification. In order to do this, we partner with a large number of technology providers in the AEC space to provide the best solutions for our clients. Where technology does not exist or is not efficient enough for our customers, we have also developed our own applications to support the offering. Here is a snapshot of just some of the providers that we work with and our own technology in CQ, Navigate, and Sevilla. Today, we will be talking about InfoAsset Manager, which is an Autodesk solution for who we are a platinum partner for. I shall now hand over to Idris for the core presentation for today.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Okay, so I am going to share my presentation. Let me know when that comes through, Simon. We should be good to go.
Yeah, good to go.
Very good. Okay. Whilst I am presenting, I'd like to take myself off camera if that's okay.
Just a bit before we get started, there is a questions tab, so please feel free to ask questions throughout today's presentation.
Very good. Okay. So, yes, my presentation today will focus on flood defenses and flood defense survey. So here's a look at the agenda. I'll be providing an introduction to the Autodesk Water Infrastructure Solutions, who we are and what we do. Then I'll follow up with an introduction to flood defenses, how they're represented in InfoAsset, the surveys surrounding flood defenses, and also I'll be touching on the Environmental Agency's guidance, the EA's guidance. I will follow up with an overview of what we mean by asset management. Then I'll delve deeper into the specifics of asset management with regards for flood defenses. And after all of that, I'll wrap up with a final conclusion slide for the question and answer session. Okay, so the Autodesk water infrastructure solutions have been around in one way or another, providing solutions for the water industry for over 40 years, more specifically in the hydraulic modeling sphere, where we started off with collection network modeling. But the solutions that we provide do cover the entire water cycle, from the design and analysis of water distribution, then onto sewer and stormwater networks, as well as drainage design, all the way through to platforms that allow for operational forecasting of water, wastewater, and stormwater networks, and the data analytic platforms to provide operational insights. We also, of course, provide asset management tools, which, as we will see during this webinar, provide users with the tools to manage and maintain their assets. So that's really just a very brief introduction. We'll move on to the main topic of the day. So, as I'm sure many of our UK attendees know, after the publication of the pit review, which was undertaken due to the terrible floods in England in June and July 2007, many of the recommendations made within the report from that review became included in the Flood and Water Management Act of 2010 for England and Wales. The aim of the Act was to reduce risk-related flooding and coastal erosion to help achieve this role. The body and the organization of the lead local flood authority was created to manage flood risk. So in the local government area and on water courses, I guess that were not main rivers, that was their main concern. So the webinar today is looking at ways that organizations such as the lead local flood authorities can meet the requirements placed upon them under Section 21 of this Act, the Flood and Water Management Act of 2010. The definition is on the slide that is currently up. It's to establish and maintain a register of structures or features which, in the opinion of the authority, are likely to have a significant effect on the flood risk in this area. It is also to establish and maintain a record of information about each of those structures or features, including information about ownership and the state of repair. So that's quite a wide-ranging duty. The question, therefore, is what should be included in those registers? Well, it can include many structures such as gullies, culverts, pipes, pumping stations, trash screens, ditches, and purpose-built flood defense structures. These structures include groins, seawalls, revetments, dikes, artificial headlands, and breakwaters. All of these assets will require inspections and maintenance to be able to prioritize investment and thereby minimize the risk of failure. So today I'm going to be looking at ways to do this specifically for coastal defense and inland flood defense assets. So many organizations which are tasked with assessing asset condition have adopted the approach provided in the EA's, the Environment Agency's asset inspection guidance. This approach to the Tier 1 inspections, which we are going to look at today, in which an overall asset grade is derived based on the weighting and grade for each element of a flood defense structure. This allows the inspectors to understand whether a higher tier of inspection is warranted. And whilst it is not a requirement, I believe that for local authority inspectors to achieve a T98 accreditation, attending the course does provide an inspector with a level of confidence that they're inspecting to a set standard. It also means that they get a copy of the condition assessment manual, which underpins the whole approach. So next, I'm going to talk about asset management in general. I'm going to start off presenting this as a 6-part breakdown, each part beginning with the letter I, more or less, hence the 6 I's of asset management. So asset management can mean many things to many people. In our solution, it can be broken down into 6 broad aspects. To begin with, we have infrastructure. So this is going to tell you what you own and where it's located. This is the asset register and the mapping, essentially, which includes class libraries, data standards, electronic documents, media files, as well as an overall document management system, which is built into the solution. Excuse me. The asset register shouldn't just be about what you own, that is, the physical characteristics and where it is located. Rather, we think it should provide a more comprehensive biography of what's been done to an asset over its lifetime. This is a very important point. So I'm going to repeat that. What has been done to the asset over its lifetime? So we're documenting all of these aspects against the asset. So that this can mean what surveys have been carried out, what problems the assets have given us over its lifetime, what remediation was taken to solve these problems. The next I are the inspections and the surveys. This is going to tell you the condition and the remaining life. There are inspections and surveys for condition assessment, as well as those for mapping, which is the asset capture, the discovering, which is the locating, relocating of assets, which include GPS capabilities in the field. These taken together start to paint a picture of how your network is performing. So we now know where the infrastructure is located, and through the inspections and surveys, its condition and its accurate location. The next I are the incidents. So incidents are going to answer an important question of how the network is performing and where it's failing. Usually, assessing the system is from feedback, either from staff reporting issues or from customers reporting in. It gives you a good picture of what areas of the networks are failing, which assets are not performing, and for what reason. We can also capture what the impact is of those failures. So out of the box in InfoAsset Manager, which is our solution, I will mention that there is a dedicated object or the flooding incident, in which we can associate this against an asset or even against a property. Flooding incidents captures the time and date that it occurred, its physical extent, who alerted regarding the incident, what was the cause or problem it caused, and what were the steps taken to fix the problem, costs can be assigned against an individual incidents. So over time, and assessing all the incidents that are recorded in the catchment against your assets, it is possible to get an idea of the overall cost that flooding causes. The next I are the interventions and remediations. So, what are you going to do to improve the performance, given you know what you own, you know the condition it's in, you know which are your poor performing assets? Okay. So, we're starting to build a more comprehensive picture of what's going on. We can, in InfoAsset, program in repairs or maintenance of our assets. Later on in the presentation, in the webinar, we will look at exactly how we do this. The next I'm moving along now are the investments. So where are you going to spend? This really is the crux of asset management, where you make the difficult decision of where to prioritize spending. Out of the box, we include a number of inbuilt reports, but the solution is highly configurable. Our clients can quickly and easily produce reports to extract data and statistics to give you very localized answers to your questions. So if you're interested in where to spend, producing reports detailing where best to invest is very easy. And the final I are the inhabitants and the investors. Okay. So what level of service are you delivering to your stakeholders? How has the investment helped to improve the service by protecting the public, by protecting the environment, ensuring compliance with regulations, and maintaining good overall public relations? And so, I guess if you do the infrastructure, the inspections, the incidents, the interventions, and the investments well, you're likely to do well for the inhabitants and the investors. To recap, asset management isn't a finite goal, but rather an ongoing, continuous, cyclical process. So with our solutions, we try to address these 6 aspects of asset management. This is the ever ongoing cyclical process of what it means to continuously survey, assess, maintain an ever-aging assets portfolio. Okay, so let's take a deeper look at the solution. The solution that I will present today, which addresses all aspects of asset management that I've just touched on. All the 6 points is branded again with another I, which is InfoAsset. InfoAsset, first and foremost, is a complete asset management that enables the day-to-day running of operations. I will repeat this. It is for the day-to-day running of your operations, maintaining all of the assets. So it's an operational tool. It has aspects of a CMMS, a computer maintenance management system, with aspects of work order management for all of your assets. InfoAsset becomes a central repository of data stored in silos. Hence, here I'm showing just a few of these. It's a pen. So I'm showing the data that can be brought into InfoAsset. All of this data can be brought in to one place. InfoAsset really becomes a central repository for data stored in silos. Here I'm showing, again, just a few of these. by bringing together all of these disparate sources of information, we really do start to gain an incredible insight into our network. In our solution, we provide functionality to import and export to these systems, either manually, through the interface, or automatically through APIs where no user input is required. Okay. Then we have InfoAsset Mobile. InfoAsset Mobile is the data collection solution. So from InfoAsset Manager, I can program work orders. These can be scheduled. Again, I will show this in detail in the presentation. The scheduled work orders are created and sent to the field crews who receive them on tablets running InfoAsset Mobile. The work orders are executed, their progress tracked, and when completed, that they are sent back to the office. Okay, so reactive work can also be captured. If an inspection, repair, clean, or other type of maintenance is performed ad hoc, it is possible to capture this information. We can also capture incidents. These can be recorded. And finally, one other aspect is InfoAsset Online. It's a web browser enabled view of the data within InfoAsset Manager. So that data is made easily and cheaply available to the rest of the organization without the overhead of having to install software on many machines. As of April of this year, InfoAsset is now one complete package. We don't sell it in components. So InfoAsset, when our clients purchase InfoAsset, they get the whole bundle in one. So that's a copy of InfoAsset Manager and unlimited InfoAsset Mobile and unlimited InfoAsset Online. We sell it now as one bundle together. Okay, I'm now going to jump into the solution so we can look at what it can offer. For this, I have recorded videos. So to begin with, I'll start looking at the flood defenses. So my next slide is going to be a video. So let me just take my... Okay, so the first thing to say about InfoAsset Manager, it's multi-user application, allowing many users to access the database at the same time and also be working with the same network at the same time. This makes it easy to share data across an organization and reduce errors. Many IT working on the same data set can mitigate against this. Okay, so I opened up a network, and I can see I've got a few flood defenses. Let's see if I can pause the video here. Let's take my laser point. Okay, I'm just going to scroll back. So yes, I've got some defenses here. We can see these. I've got a flood defense area, which is a polygon object. Got these lines, flood defense structures. Currently, there's no background, nothing. These are simply our assets being displayed. I can easily access their properties. So as I click on a flood defense structure, I can see its definition. So all of the properties we have here, from its ID, the type of structure it is, who it's maintained by, its location. We can see these sort of colored secondary sort of properties. These are the flags. I'll discuss these a bit later on. Again, here we've got some further details about the property. And here, importantly, details about its condition. So that's the condition grade. The last time it was surveyed, its construction date, its criticality and security. And again, we've got these secondary attributes, the flags. I'll talk in more detail about those. And users can customize and add fields. There are user text, user number, and user date fields. Or we can attach any number of images, in fact, images, videos, and any other electronic file. We also have the ability to hyperlink and add time series data to each and every object and add notes. And here we're looking at a defense area. Again, let me just pause it there, rewind it, important point. Here we go. Just going to pause it there. We include a lot of these drop-down combo boxes, and this way we can start to standardize on the actual data that we can keep in our database. We're standardizing on common values that are. Oops, what's happened there? I accidentally go backward. Here we are. The tribulations of live presenting. Let's go forward. I'll jump to where I was. Okay, so the defense structure. Seen this, and now we're at the defense area. Okay, so again, the defense area, very similar to the defense structure. We have all of the information against our asset, including the cost information. Again, we can see attachments such as images on these. There is a different way that we can access exactly the same information. So now we were presented with the dialog boxes, which are a great way of viewing the data. But whilst the dialog box is open, we can't do very much else. With these properties dialog boxes, we can have information around an asset or a survey, but still be able to restructure how we view that information, and also use the application while still having all of this up. We can customize how we view the information, the layouts, and so on. And now we're going to look at, it's great to see the assets by themselves, but much better if we're able to give the assets some sort of context so we can see how, where they are found. So here I'm bringing in some background mapping, so TIFF files, images, shape files. We can connect directly to Esri geodatabases. We can add these aerial photos. We can create these themes, which are another great way of visualizing our assets. So I've taken off the flood defenses. I was showing the drainage network. I brought back the flood defenses. I can color these up. As I hover over my assets, I can see the attachments. So any images, any electronic documentation, I can scroll through these. I can even open them from these pop-up dialog boxes. If I've got a digital terrain model, I can add that, and I can display that again in a number of ways. I can view the network in a 3D, which I think is what's next on the video. So this gives us 3D rendering with the mapping of the network. So I can see the lie of the land. I can zoom in. I can actually overlay my assets on this. I can change the vertical exaggeration factor. Oh, it's gone a bit too far. Suddenly, my coastal town here in the UK. This is Croyd for any of you that know Croyd in Devon. I've made it positively alpine. Let's turn that down a bit so we can see the beach, the dunes that are the flood defences that are represented here. So removing that ground model, and we're towards the we can create labels. We can access the data in a tabular format. Again, these different colors are the flags. So here's my flood defense structure that I had selected. The colored fields, again, are the flags. So here's a list of each of these flood defenses. From the grid, I can jump onto the properties window view with the flags. I can also, from the grid, jump onto the geoplan. Again, accessing the data. It's all very, very easy and intuitive to use. So the flags, I might pause it on here again. So flagging is an important aspect of our solution. It's metadata. Metadata is effectively data about data. It gives you an extra layer of information about an individual property field. This could be where the data has come from, its provenance, which might give you more confidence. So if your data's come from a recent survey as opposed to an older document, it might give you more confidence in that data. So flags can indicate where your data has come from. It can give you an idea of how much confidence you can put on that data point. It could be a reason. So if I, as a user, making changes, I might want to track the changes that I make. So each change that I do make, I can assign a flag to that change for a specific reason. So here we have various flags, everything from denoting that this data's come from a survey, from a GIS, from an old paper record or whatnot, or that it might have even been inferred by the solution. I can also jump out to other mapping providers, such as Google Maps. So from within InfoAsset, I can right-click on a location, and I can jump out onto Google Maps, into other providers such as Bing, OpenStreetMaps, and so on. The user can also put their own provider in there. And Google Street View is always a good way of jumping out into the solution to the right location. So to repeat, a quick right click in InfoAsset Manager, I can choose to automatically jump into Google Maps, Bing Maps, OpenStreetMaps, Google Street View, and so on. Let's move this along a little bit. Okay, so this is now InfoAsset Online. This is the sort of free viewer. Again, let me repeat, that's a viewer. It requires no installation. All of the data that's available to the power user in InfoAsset Manager is automatically available So any changes that are made in InfoAsset Manager, that change is immediately available to the viewer in InfoAsset Online. Again, all of that data can be consumed, viewed very easily. I can make the different themes available. All of the attachments are available. All of the defenses, which we'll look at in the next video, are also available. We can see here, probably jumping ahead of the queue. From flood defense, see this in the next video, we can see its history. So this flood defense has had 4 surveys. We'll look at this in more detail in the next video. So I think that's the end of this video. So for this next video, I'll look at flood defenses. So let's kick that off. So for my assets, which we saw just at the end of the last video, from a flood defense survey in InfoAsset Manager, I can navigate to any associated objects. These are the surveys, any maintenance that I've carried out, any issues that I've had, any incidents that I've had. So here's a flood defense survey. It's geometry, which can be captured in the field using InfoAsset Mobile, which I'll look at a bit later, but mainly for the flood defense itself. We can capture a lot of information. So, for example, does it protect domestic property, commercial properties? Does it protect land? How many dwellings are protected? How many of which are commercial? Were it to fail, would it damage crops? Again, this flood defense survey is essentially the EA's T98 flood defense survey. So any users or any our listeners, anyone tuning in who is familiar, they'll be familiar then with these sort of condition grading and drop-down combo boxes. Again, I apologize, this jumped the gun. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, so let's play on that. Okay, yep, so here we are with the condition grading, the drop-down dialogues to capture all of the different issues that might arise. As we survey our flood defense survey, we measure the chainage for each different element. And again, we can capture all of that information according to the EA's flood defense survey. So each component of your flood defense structure can have a condition grading component. Okay, we can associate again photos and so on. So all of the details are included. Let's move this along. And here we're looking at the scheduling. So this is, we're now viewing a completed survey, but this is essentially how we create, when we come to creating a survey and we come to scheduling, we'll complete that and send it out to the field. Again, we'll look at this in detail a bit later on. We can capture the resources and materials and the costs against a survey. And here for the completed survey, just by hovering over it, we can see any of the photos that were captured on that day. Scroll through that. Okay, as we move along. Let's move this along a little bit faster. So now we're looking at the mobile aspect. So InfoAsset Mobile is our field tablet application. It's completely customizable. So what we're looking at here is an example of, let me slow this down, is an example of an application, which is a customization that I put together. In this example, I've got lots of different surveys, manhole surveys, CCTV surveys for your classic, sewerage or storm network surveys. I've got, again, pipe cleans, pump station maintenance, repairs, and the capturing of blockage incidents or customer complaints. But again, any of the repairs, maintenance, or surveys that come out of the box, or even those that can be designed in InfoAsset, can be made available to InfoAsset Mobile. InfoAsset Mobile doesn't edit information about an asset directly. The idea is to capture information about an asset in a survey, and if we wanted to then transfer that to an asset, this is then done not in the field. It is done in InfoAsset Manager by a power user. Once it's gone through a rigorous QA, quality assurance and quality control procedure, all built into our solution. But InfoAsset Mobile is a tablet, and it's built around the idea of the form. So we'll look at a new flood defense survey. And again, the form is 100% configurable and built bespoke for a customer. Okay, so here is an example of a flood defense survey. Everything is wholly customizable, from the logos, from the wording, the size of the dialog boxes, the layout. We can embed into here forms. Let's look at that. So I've added, the team leaders are, of course, an important aspect who's carrying out the survey. If we've got a repeat period, we can embed into the form important information, such as how to go about, standard operating procedures, how to go about a survey. We can also embed into here important health and safety information. Okay, so health and safety, how to keep safe out into your field crews. That information can be embedded. Traffic calming procedures if required. The forms themselves can be over a number of pages. As I've mentioned, the layout is wholly customizable. In the field, we can add the ability to capture coordinates. So if we're mapping the geometry of a flood defense structure, we can capture that as a series of points. And on the next page here, we can attach some photographs. So if your tablet has a camera, as they take the photographs, we can be adding these to the survey. Once these are uploaded through the mobile telephone network, once the survey is complete, all of these images, as well as the data captured, will be available to the field. Back to the office, I beg your pardon. Okay, last photograph here. Let's move this around quickly. Okay, I can also add video. Here we have and some video of some flood defenses being breached and the water sort of coming over the wall. Move along. And the important aspect is to capture the condition of my flood defense survey. So coastal or inland flood defenses, I enter the chain age, to and from, the condition details, the condition grade. And again, all of the drop-down dialog boxes, the drop-down combo boxes, just as we saw in InfoAsset Manager, are available in InfoAsset Mobile. And we can see, as we'll see later on, when we enter a condition value, we now have an automatic scoring according to EEA standard. Okay, so with the schedule, there is an, let's pause this again. In the office, InfoAsset Mobile can be accessed by the overall power user. The ops manager say they will be able to see each of their resources. So these are the team leaders with a calendar view, and these are the different work orders. They'll be able to open up the work order, and importantly, the power user in the office is able to reassign work orders to other resources. So here are some sometime in the future. These ones are unfinished. The one in red ought to have been completed, so it's overdue. As you move it to later, it loses its overdue red. So I can reassign it across resources. I can, as the ops manager, I can reassign it to my other team member, or I can change its date. Okay, so on to the next video. We also have the ability to have a sustainable drainage system, sustainable urban drainage system, SUDS, in InfoAsset Manager and Mobile. Let's play this video. So a SUD structure, because there is no defined standard for it, there is an out-of-the-box storage area which can be defined as a SUD in InfoAsset Manager, but our users can also create their own asset and define it as a SUD. It could be maybe a swale, a pond, or any other porous pavement. If they want to define individual assets, or each of these had their own individual properties, that is now possible. It is also possible to define a SUDS survey or any sort of maintenance or issue that you want associated with your SUDS structure. Okay, so all of this is now possible to do at no extra cost. InfoAsset Manager, as I've mentioned, doesn't have any tiers. We now simply include everything in InfoAsset Manager, mobile, online, the ability to create and define your own objects, the ability to connect to time series sources, and the ability to import and export to any number of external data sources, other enterprise solutions, without the need for user input. So in automatic import and export to other enterprise solutions is now all available in the one package. But for this example, I'm going to use the out-of-the-box solution. Okay, so again, as we hover over our assets, I've now chucked on a different theme. This is the SUDS. So I've switched off my flood defenses, and here I've got a porous car park, a pond, and some swales. Okay, each colored differently according to a theme that I've set up. One of the good things about these themes that we can see here is that once a user has created a theme, it is automatically available to all other users similarly as they connect to their different layers. As one user creates and saves this, all other users have access to this. Any validation for error checking, SQLs to produce your own queries, reports, statistical reports on the data, selection lists, ground models, different workspaces, inference. Once a user creates this, it automatically becomes available to all other users. Just to reinforce that point, InfoAsset Manager is a multi-use database. Any number of users can be looking at working with editing the data, and currently it has something called version control. So any changes that are made are tracked, but any historical changes are never overwritten. They simply form part of the history of the changes that have been made. And we can mine into that to see exactly the reason for a change, why a certain change was made, by whom, at what time. So here we're looking at a porous car park. I think I'm just going to scroll on. So here we've denoted that it is a substructure. So this is our out-of-the-box storage area. Remember, you can define your own porous car park if you want much greater level of detail. So this is a SUDS. Let's play on. Okay. So we get lots of the information about the benefits, amenity benefits, biodiversity. You have your cost information. So, yep, this is how we represent substructures in InfoAsset Manager. So here we have a pond, for example, and we can have its sort of level, area, perimeter information. Here again, swale, we have attachments. You can access these. Here we have just the one attachment, as I've mentioned already, any number of attachments, videos, PDF files, CAD drawings, you name it. Okay, so our penultimate video will look at scheduling. So here we have a defense structure. It's now selected. Okay, so I select two of my assets. I go up to the main menu where I can access the scheduling functionality. Okay, or I can simply click on the toolbar. So I'm about to create some flood surveys, but here are all of our out of the box. Let's go back a little bit. We'll pause it there. These are all of the out of the box surveys, but also we can have anything else. Let's pause that. Anything else that I've created that's not out of the box. So here, for example, a street light inspection. What else have I created in here? No, I think that's the only one that's extra. Everything else, grass cutting. But pretty much everything else is an out-of-the-box survey. Let's click on play. So I'm going to create two tasks because I've got two assets created. I want to create some location sketch for these. We want to review before the creation. So here's my my scheduling, which we've seen already. Who am I going to give that to, and on what date? So which whom of my field engineers is going to carry out the survey? Say, is my list. Simon, you seem to be in there. So we'll click on that. So here and now, here now are my created surveys. Close that out, that tab. And once I hit the save button, and I can add a comment, I essentially commit that work to the field crew. So I had a comment. This is all part of the data tracking, the who's making what changes to the database for what reason. Now I've jumped into the mobile. So if we look at this sort of top right corner, we should see the 2 new surveys appear, which they have done. Okay. So this is still in the office, the ops manager. In the field, that particular resource, the plumbing and the survey engineer. So suspension of disbelief here. We can imagine we're in the field and I'm opening up my mobile. This is my tablet. So that specific field engineer enters their username and their PIN number. Okay. So we can see the interface is very similar to the office interface, so the flood defense survey. But importantly, on the schedule, let's pause it here, that field engineer, as opposed to seeing all of the work assigned to all of the field engineers, they only see the work that's assigned to them. They have no option to reassign that to anyone else or change the time. It's essentially locked down, whereas the operational engineer in the same view in the office has the ability to reshuffle work across their resources, reassign them to other field engineers, or even change the date in the office. That field engineer can only see the work that they've been assigned. And then they can open up the work from this view, or they can go onto the map, go onto the asset and open it from there. So being GPS enabled, they'd be able to be at that location and open up the work order from the map. So they carry out that survey. So here's an example of being at an asset, selecting that asset and seeing that there's a flood defense survey associated with it. They can open it from there. So here I've got the survey again. So the idea I'm trying to give is that you can open your work order from the map or from your sort of calendar agenda, as it were. And now we can access the attachments. We can start to fill in data. Okay, so GPS enable, I can capture X and Y coordinates. Okay. And I can get to in there, attach some photographs. Much easier with a real tablet. You simply click, the image is then automatically attached. In this example, I've had to browse for the images. And again, I can now start to fill in and capture information about that flood defense. Okay. Let's move this along. So very quickly, adding all of the information as I capture that data. Well, that's it. And once I've completed that, so as I complete, there is a button on the form that says complete. It turns from white to green, which means that it's been completed on time. Were it turn red, it means that it should have been carried out by then. And back in InfoAsset Manager, I now have all of that information that is being sent back. Okay. So there is the flag field of who carried out that survey, that it was completed by, the time of date it was completed by, any of the images that we attached. Okay, so we took that one image and attached it, and here we have it in the office. Okay, so let's move along. Okay, so built into the mobile field solution is the environmental agency's scoring system. We have enabled this scoring to be live in the field, where the engineer, as they start to enter the different weightings and the different condition grades, the calculation for the overall score is calculated on the fly. The slide is a definition of the algorithm for the scoring. It was included as part of the flood defense form in mobile. Okay, so the next slide will show this in action. Let's click on play. Okay, so video should kick in. So the field survey engineer starts to enter a weighting and a condition grade, and we can see the calculated condition appearing automatically. So the software automatically populates the weighted condition and the calculated condition. Now, what happens if I change an element to 9? Okay, so I'm going to change this element to 9, and we get to the system override, right? So the worst condition is of course used, but of course, and the inspector, the field engineer, can manually override this. All right. So one thing I failed to mention was that when we schedule a survey, at any time in the future, we can also make a previous survey available to the field engineer, so that if they want to access the previous survey and see what the conditions were previously to what they are now, they can compare what you're currently surveying to what was observed previously, and they can determine whether deterioration has taken place. Okay. All right. So, in conclusion, today's webinar would focus mainly on the workflows for coastal defences that can be applied to inland defences, and we're following the EA's asset inspection guidance. Flood defences are just a subset of the assets that can be managed within the platform. It has the capability to hold asset information on SUDs, for example, but it can cope with anything else: roads, street lights, street furniture, etc., etc. So it's not just for flood defences. It covers an array of different asset types and has the ability to create custom ones, not just those out of the box. And so, onto the Q&A.
Thank you, Ibra. Thanks for that presentation. If you have any questions, please could you add them into the questions field at the bottom of the screen. If you would like to hear about InfoAsset in any more detail, please do feel free to get in touch with us as well. You should just get a notification pop up on the screen there. Brilliant. Thank you. I think we'll call it a day there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Simon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.